Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A little more than 10 years ago, I had the pleasure of launching The Snowbridge and Other Stories, a collection of short stories which, in the previous year, had won the Proverse Prize for a full-length work. Again in 2019, Proverse did me the honour of launching my novel, As Leaves Blow. In a literary career marked by long spaces between productive results, today is a welcome and indeed significant personal event. For keeping faith with me through my journey, I have to thank Gillian, her husband, the late Dr. Werner Bickley, and of course Proverse, Hong Kong, for their patience in bringing me back again, this time with the blessing and support of the Hong Kong Arts Development Council, to mark and celebrate the launch of yet another volume, which, for reasons I'll explain, has been more than 40 years in the making. I must also thank my dear wife Dell and youngest son Matthew for providing the permission necessary to any artist working alone, to my son Andrew on the far side of the Pacific Ocean for early editorial insight, and my son Mark for technical expertise that puts me to shame, who between them have supported the pursuit of a dream with valued contribution. At some risk to your comfort, I feel obliged to quote from the memoirs of P.G. Wodehouse, who attended more book launches than you can shake a stick at, who, like many creative minds, had more opinions than was really decent. Book talks, he said, were the dullest speeches I'd ever heard. Being told for 3/4 of an hour how a beastly book was written, when a simple apology was all that was required, was more than anyone should be asked to bear. In anticipation of reactions similar to those described by Wodehouse, who, despite his cynicism, established a reputation which 9 out of 10 authors would envy, I will endeavour to be brief and relate what drove me to write Dewfall, while continuing to bear in mind another Wodehouse comment that an author who expects results from an early novel is in a position similar to that of a man dropping a rose petal into the Grand Canyon and listening for the echo. We are, in other words, mere scribblers and hostages to fortune, fashion, a little luck, and our own inescapable vanity. Again, and within the context of a long life's reflection on the state of mankind, it's sometimes ascent to the heavens and as often affinity for devils, and a personal need to say something, however unpalatable it may be. Dewfall became the result after an age in the making. The first line of my once putative novel, which does not appear in the final book, was written in 1985 on the fringes of the Arabian desert, where I and many others were constructing a seat of learning, far from what in those days many Westerners and Orientalists alike viewed as its traditional haunts. My perception then and now is that while mankind can be godlike in his reason, he is at the same time deeply flawed, and nothing can save him from his own corrosive nature and discontent. And that is why, all those years ago, I composed on an Olivetti typewriter the opening line of the book, while hoping my point of view would resonate, and which read as follows. And it came to pass that the fair children of the planet Earth, in their endless discontent, spread across the cosmos to new suns and new beginnings, and from where, as time passed, they eventually corrupted all they touched. My attempt throughout the book has been to throw some light on the human condition. In the modern world, we are often what jobs and economic circumstances decree. This person is a doctor, this a barber, another a businessman being chauffeured in a limousine, and yet another a street sweeper. And in our relationships, reaction to authority, demand for service, respect or disrespect are all products of those conditions. Do we, in other words, have the will to decide, or are we inevitably bound by circumstance and where our genes take us? In Dewfall, everyone starts out equal. How and why should that change? Why and when do some learn to command and others obey? Are we born to live in communities, or are we better off living alone? These are deep philosophical questions, and in my exploration I've only begun to scratch the surface. Perhaps, given time, I will be able to probe these issues more thoroughly, but at the speed at which I produce books, my publisher and audience might have to wait another 10 years. In the meantime, I shall continue to wrestle with the challenges inherent in works of total imagination, which in this case prevented me drawing on any context of time and place. The characters of Dewfall, by definition, exist in a unique set of circumstances, without history, education, memory, or social structure. Such a family, tribe, or nation, there are no predetermined allegiances and none of the usual reference points. At the outset, the people have no tools, no names, no recognition of different genders, no concepts of time, distance, or numbers. They are all, to intents and purposes, dropped into their situation intellectually naked, although I was compelled to provide a common language to make sense of the narrative. This situation presented limitations. I couldn't, for example, say the river was a mile away. But more difficult than that, I was unable to use common figures of speech, such as metaphors or similes. Phrases like, he's a rough diamond, or she cries like a baby, because apart from no one knowing what a he or she was, none would comprehend the concepts of a diamond or baby. Authors are, of course, not above a certain arrogance in their compulsion to speak and desire to be understood. If, however, they lay claim to any virtue, it may not be one of their own doing, and that books can be set aside when they do not please, unlike today's social media, which amplifies the words, however fatuous, of those who thrust themselves into the lives of everyone, whether they want to listen or not. And during the long time that the desire to share a thought burned inside me, it had to be set in the context of being a husband and father. He was obliged to earn a living. Only now, and after 6 years of retirement, have I been able to pick up the threads again and complete a long-promised, a long-delayed project, which stayed close to my heart for so many years. Thank you all for the opportunity to share some of the story behind Dewfall.